Chapter 17 Grand Opening Rimuru's Pav. I slowly opened my eyes, feeling the soft warmth of the morning sun streaming through the window. The golden rays of the early morning filled the room with a calming light. Looks like it's time for the big day. As I stretched and sat up, I felt refreshed and ready for what promised to be a monumental occasion. The grand opening of the most significant project in Tempest had finally arrived. While I don't rely on coffee as some do, it's become a tradition for Velzard and me to drink it together in the mornings. It's a little ritual we've gotten into. I reached into my imaginary space and pulled out 2 mugs of coffee, one hot and one iced, made exactly how we like them. Good morning, Rimuru-kun. Velzard's voice greeted me softly. She stretched, sat up beside me, and rubbed her eyes sleepily. Good morning, Velz-chan. Here you go, I replied with a grin, handing her the cold mug. She took it gratefully, her fingers brushing against mine for a brief moment. I took a sip of my hot coffee, savoring the rich, smooth taste. It didn't do much for me, but it tasted darn good. That's why we drink it. It looks like today will finally reveal the grand project you 3 have been working on, she said, a hint of excitement in her voice as she took a sip from her mug. I nodded eagerly. Yup, I'm super excited. We've done countless tests to ensure everything works as intended, especially the resurrection bracelet. We fine-tuned each floor to ensure the difficulty didn't spike too drastically. As for the other non-dungeon features, well, those will be a surprise for the public, I said, my voice full of excitement. She raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Era? I thought the dungeon was supposed to be just an attraction for adventurers. What other uses does it serve? She asked, and I grinned mischievously. He, there's more to it than that. The 100th floor of the dungeon is a multi-purpose area. For one, there are several laboratories there for testing all sorts of different projects. And Veldora's private room will be on that floor too, which means he's officially moving out of this house, I explained, my enthusiasm brimming. Velzard's eyes widened in surprise, and momentarily, she was speechless. But that shock quickly melted into a cheeky grin. Foo. It's quite a shame Veldora-kun will no longer be around, she mused, her gaze shifting playfully. But that means we can finally use the hot spring in this house without worrying about my little brother walking in on us, she added teasingly. Oh crap, the implication hit me like a freight train. Louie, why is that the first thing on your mind? I stuttered, sheepishly scratching the back of my head. Velzard's eyes darkened with mischief, and her gaze became even more seductive and hungry. She deliberately set her mug down on the nightstand before swiftly moving to sit beside me. Because, Rimuru-kun, it's been quite a while since we've relaxed properly, she purred, her voice dripping provocatively as she inched her face closer to mine. The seductive dragon has fully awoken. Wait, well you're right. Now that Veldora's moving out, we can use the hot spring whenever you want, I stammered, trying to gather my wits as I gently placed my hands on her shoulders. To my relief, that seemed to appease her, and she promptly climbed off me with a satisfied smile. I'll make sure you keep that promise, Rimuru-kun, she teased, her grin widening. Phew, that was close. It's about time I made good on that promise. Yeah, come on, let's get ready for today, I said, standing up from the bed and quickly changing into my Demon Lord outfit. Velzard did the same, though, when she stood up, I couldn't help but pause and blink in surprise. She wore a new outfit. It was a white and blue kimono with a yellow obi tied neatly around her waist. The kimono was decorated with delicate blue snowflakes, emphasizing her frosty nature and elegance. Her usual yellow headband adorned her head, but her hair was now tied in a neat ponytail rather than her usual twin tails. The change was striking, yet it suited her perfectly. The soft fabric flowed beautifully around her, adding to her graceful, serene aura. Safe to say, she looked absolutely gorgeous. That new outfit fit her like it was made for her. I could only stare for a moment before shaking myself out of my stupor. Wow, Velz-chan, I said, my voice uncharacteristically soft. You look amazing. She gave me a small, satisfied smile, clearly pleased by the compliment. Thank you, Rimuru-kun, she replied, her voice warmer than usual. I couldn't help but smile back, my heart fluttering just a little. Today would be a big day, and I couldn't shake the thought of how lucky I was to have someone like Velzard by my side. Having changed into our finest attires, we teleported to the lobby, arriving before anyone else. It looked like we were the first ones here. Meh, Being early is better than being late anyway. Velzard and I sat on the couch, settling in as we realized there would still be some time before the event truly kicked off. My excitement for the grand opening of the dungeon bubbled up inside me, but for now, I let myself enjoy the peaceful moment. Out of nowhere, Velzard rested her head on my shoulder, a soft smile of contentment on her face. She didn't say a word, just leaned into me, and for a moment, everything felt calm. I was a bit surprised, but I didn't dislike it. So, I stayed silent, letting myself relax and enjoy the moment with her. We remained like that for a few minutes, undisturbed and comfortable. Surprisingly, it wasn't awkward at all. In fact, it was quite the opposite. It felt peaceful, almost perfect, and rather pleasant. I loved the quiet atmosphere we shared. But that tranquil moment didn't last long. A strange distortion in space-time rippled through the air a few meters behind the couch. I turned to look, and there he was. Veldora teleported into the lobby with his usual exuberant expression. "Koo ha 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 ha. Rimuru, today is the big day. I sure hope you're. Veldora's voice faltered mid-sentence, his usual enthusiasm slowing as he took in the sight before him. For some reason, he seemed apprehensive, which made Velzard giggle softly. I blinked, unsure of what was going on. Why did he suddenly look so awkward? Did I stumble onto something I wasn't supposed to? Veldora asked, glancing between Velzard and me with a tinge of anxiety. What was he talking about? Velzard's playful laugh broke the silence. Foo, not at all, Veldora-kun. Come sit with us, she urged him with a soft tone. Veldora hesitated, eyeing us with a mix of curiosity and confusion, but after a moment, he shrugged and walked toward the couch. Strangely, though, he was trying to avoid looking directly at us, which only added to the mystery of the situation. Then, I felt a soft sensation on my arm. I looked to my right, and to my shock, Velzard was still clinging to my arm, tightly. What? Had she been holding on to my arm the whole time? How did I not notice? Oh, crap. Now I understood why Veldora was acting so awkwardly. His sister had been clinging to me this whole time, and I hadn't even realized it. It seems you were so caught up in the peaceful moment that you overlooked her actions, Rimuru-sama. Like hell, that's the case. I couldn't have been that comfortable, right? According to your thoughts just moments ago, you found the situation rather pleasant. Quit reading my mind all the time. Foo. There's no need for me to read your mind, Rimuru-sama. I'm a part of you, after all. I really need to control my thoughts better. Then again, CL's probably been snooping around in my mind anyway, so it's almost pointless to try. Sigh. The mind of Amana's is genuinely terrifying. I'm starting to wonder if she's been experimenting with my skills behind my back. There's no point in thinking about it now. Focus, Rimuru. Veldora finally settled on the couch, still looking uncharacteristically shy. He adjusted himself a few times, trying to get comfortable, but still seemed off. After a few moments, Velzard released my arm with a satisfied smile, and Veldora could finally look at us with less discomfort. I couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. This guy was definitely starting to suspect something between me and his sister. Anyway, Veldora, you were saying? I nudged him, trying to steer the conversation back to where we left off. Veldora straightened up, cleared his throat, and regained his usual confidence. Yes. I hope you're ready for the grand opening of the dungeon. After the event, Ramirez and I have something to show you, he said, his voice full of excitement, which piqued my curiosity. Oh, you made more additions to the dungeon? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Veldora nodded with a grin, looking pleased with himself. It's just one addition, but I'm sure you'll appreciate it, he said, keeping his words vague. I leaned forward slightly, more intrigued than ever. Really? Care to reveal what it is? I asked. Ha. You'll have to wait until the end of the day, Rimuru. Veldora replied, his grin widening at my disappointment. That's a bummer, but I guess I can wait. It better be worth it, though, I said, trying to hide my mild frustration behind a grin. With that, the conversation ended, and Veldora pulled out a manga to read, seeming to lose interest in the conversation. Velzard, still relaxed, once again laid her head on my shoulder as we waited for the guests to arrive. To pass the time, Velzard and I decided to read some manga as well. Lately, she'd gotten into Oshi no Ko, an idol-themed manga with a detective twist. We read through half a volume in peace, the quiet comfort of our shared reading only interrupted by the arrival of the first guests. The first to appear were a few of my executives who'd be accompanying us for the opening event. Not long after, Luminous and her subordinates entered, looking stunning in their formal outfits. As usual, the Vampire Queen hid any signs of irritation when she spotted Veldora, but I noticed the slight twitch in her expression before she quickly masked it. Still posing as a maid of Louis Valentine, her true identity remained a secret to the unknowing guests. Before long, the remaining guests had arrived, and the lobby was filled with bustling activity. Veldora, Velzard, and I stood up, gathering in the center of the room as the group looked on with eager eyes. We all radiated an air of dignity and authority, standing tall and proud before the guests. With a clap of my hands, I gathered everyone's attention. They turned to face us, their excitement palpable. I could sense the eager anticipation in the air. I then stepped forward and began my speech with firm resolve. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice resonating in the room. "Today marks the second day of this celebration, and we have something truly extraordinary to show you all," I announced as I gestured to Veldora. His chest puffed out with pride as he jumped in. "That's right. This project, a true collaboration between Rimuru, and myself, has been in the works for nearly a month. And now," he paused dramatically, clearly savoring the moment. "Without further ado, we present to you all." I cut myself off as I clapped my hands together sharply, the sound echoing through the room, and the air shifted. In an instant, the world around us blurred and reformed as I activated spatial transfer. We found ourselves standing before a grand entrance. "The Grand Dungeon of Tempest," I proclaimed, my voice carrying through the vast space. The guests stood in stunned silence for a moment, their eyes widening as they took in the enormity of the structure before them. The dungeon loomed like a monumental masterpiece, its intricate design melding strength and beauty in every stone. Their mouths hung agape as they absorbed the grandeur of it all, unable to look away. Moments later, the massive doors slowly began to open, creaking with power and anticipation, revealing the interior. A long stairway descended into the depths, the faint glow of torches lining the walls casting an ethereal light. "Please, follow me," I invited, my voice calm but filled with quiet pride. We walked down the staircase together. The steady flow of magicule-powered torches illuminated the path in a soft, constant glow. It was a short walk, but the atmosphere was anything but ordinary. The guests murmured in awe as we descended. As we reached the bottom, the true scale of the dungeon hit them. Before us lay a vast chamber covering an area of 62,000 square meters, a space so large it could fit an entire city inside. The lobby was adorned with elegant decorations, but the scale of it all was impossible to ignore. "Welcome to the first floor of the dungeon," I declared, my voice echoing in the massive room. The guests looked around, eyes wide, their minds struggling to comprehend the size of the space and the beauty of the design. "Wait, first floor?" Gazel asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Veldora and I exchanged a knowing glance, the grin on my face widening. He, they're in for more than they bargained for," I said, trying to contain my excitement. "That's right," Veldora laughed, his voice booming in the cavernous room. "This floor is just the beginning. 100 floors, to be exact," he announced, and the guests froze. 100? They echoed in unison, their voices filled with awe and incredulity. Velzard stood silently, her serene smile unchanged as she observed the reactions with quiet amusement. "Why, you're telling me they're all this massive?" Elmesia asked, her tone filled with apprehension. Turning to her, I shook my head. "Not all of them, no. The floors vary in size, design, and theme. Each is unique, and no two are alike, though some may share similarities," I replied, and a collective gasp spread through the group. Before anyone could speak again, Veldora's voice cut through the murmur. "Rimuru, I'll be checking the levels to make sure everything is running smoothly. After that, I'll check in with the true mastermind and tell her that the dungeon is ready for its first challengers," he said as he looked at me expectantly. "Would it be fine if you continued the tour without me?" he asked. "Of course," I affirmed with a grin, giving him a fist bump. "Go on ahead. I'll show the guests around the first floor and explain how it works," I told him. "Kuahahaha, as expected of my sworn brother." Veldora laughed heartily before heading toward the stairs that led to the next floor. Turning back to the guests, I saw that the children were full of questions, their faces a mixture of curiosity and wonder. What did Veldora-sama mean by true mastermind, sensei? Alice asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. I smiled at the children, happy to explain. While Veldora and I had a hand in designing and building the dungeon, it wouldn't have been possible without Ramirez, I said, and the children's eyes widened. You mean the fairy that saved us? Kenya asked excitedly, and I nodded. That's right. She's the one who made all of this possible, I said. Gale's eyes sparkled. So, she's the mastermind behind the whole thing, he questioned. Exactly, I confirmed. Without her, the dungeon would have never come to life, I added. The children looked absolutely starstruck, their admiration for Ramirez clear. Amazing, they all exclaimed in unison, their voices filled with awe. Their admiration for Ramirez was understandable, considering all she had done for them. It was clear they saw her as a hero, and rightly so. I took a moment to let the excitement simmer before continuing the tour, eager to see their reactions as they explored more of the dungeon's secrets. Third-person Pav as Rimuru continued his tour, he began to explain the intricacies of the dungeon system to the guests. Still, he was careful to withhold certain secrets, particularly about the rooms on the 100th floor. He started with the core concept of the dungeon, making sure the guests understood its grand scale. The dungeon exists as an entirely separate dimension, Rimuru began, his voice steady. It is disconnected from the outside world. He paused for effect, watching the guests' curiosity deepen. This space was made possible thanks to Ramirez's intrinsic skill, Small World, which allows her to create vast, isolated realms that she can shape and modify at will, a feat that would be impossible for anyone else, he said. The guests exchanged impressed glances, but Rimuru's explanation was just beginning. The dungeon's purpose is to provide adventurers with a place to test their strength, hone their skills, and claim rare treasures or equipment, he continued. Then, he gestured grandly as though inviting them into an adventure, his enthusiasm palpable. But sustaining a subspace of this magnitude requires an enormous amount of energy. And that's where Veldora comes in, he went on. The guests listened intently as Rimuru elaborated. The entire dungeon runs on a constant stream of magicules, which Veldora supplies. These powerful magicules, provided directly to Ramirez, keep the dungeon stable and operational, he said. He smiled knowingly as the guests' eyes widened in realization. This energy also allows monsters to spawn continuously, thanks to the dense magicule clouds blanketing space. The lower floors, especially the first few, are teeming with high concentrations of magicules, giving rise to the most dangerous and formidable creatures, Rimuru explained, pacing back and forth, ensuring the guests hung on every word. But as you ascend through the dungeon, the magicule density gradually decreases. Consequently, the monsters become less frequent and less dangerous. Up at the highest levels, you'll find only low-tier loot and weak creatures, suitable for beginners. He paused for effect, letting the significance of this sink in. However, as you progress deeper, the challenges grow. The monsters become more dangerous, and the traps more devious. In turn, the treasures become more valuable, and the equipment increasingly rare and powerful. The difficulty escalates until you reach the lowest levels of the dungeon, where the most powerful creatures and the most coveted rewards lie in wait, he added. The guests exchanged glances, intrigued by the growing sense of adventure in Rimuru's words. His tone then shifted, becoming more informative. Every 5 floors, there's a monster-free zone where adventurers can rest, recover, and keep track of their progress. These safe zones are crucial for making it through the dungeon's many trials, he continued. He then turned to the guests, his gaze serious. But there's more. Every 10 floors, a boss monster blocks the way. They are known as guardians, and their job is to ensure the dungeon's balance and serve as a rite of passage for those seeking to advance, he informed. Rimuru let that information sink in, enjoying the wide-eyed expressions of the guests. Floors 91 to 94 aren't part of the traditional dungeon levels, Rimuru added, his tone taking on a more secretive edge. They serve as specialized facilities and are only accessible to Tempest citizens. I'll explain more later, he said. He then moved on, changing the subject to the 95th floor. The 95th floor is a lush, overgrown area where treants and elves make their home. It's the largest floor in the entire dungeon, covering an impressive 2,500 square kilometers. He paused for a moment to let the scale of the space resonate with them. Here, adventurers can find an inn offering high-quality goods, as well as a shop where equipment can be bought, sold, or repaired. To access this floor, adventurers must pay a fee of 3 silver coins. However, those who enter this way only get limited access to the inn and shop since full access requires a legitimate dungeon crawler to reach this floor, he explained, excited to share this next bit. Every adventurer who steps into the dungeon is given a resurrection bracelet, which ensures they don't truly die. If they fall in battle, the bracelet automatically revives them and transports them to the surface, healing all wounds in the process. This feature guarantees that adventurers can explore the dungeon without the risk of permanent death while maintaining the thrill of a real adventure, he informed. The guests seemed relieved, some nodding at the idea of a safety net for their adventuring. Rimuru's voice grew even more businesslike as he introduced the additional items adventurers could purchase. To aid them on their journey, adventurers can also buy 2 special items. The first is the return whistle, which costs 30 silver coins and can instantly transport the user back to the surface. It's a one-time use item and only one per adventurer. He paused, making sure to emphasize the next item. The second is a recording crystal, available for 1 gold coin. This item allows an adventurer to set a save point, essentially creating a checkpoint in their journey through the dungeon. Like the return whistle, it's a one-time use item, and once used, it must be purchased again. Rimuru's tone softened as he concluded. Now, I won't go into too much more detail about the dungeon's secret features, such as the types of monsters, the guardians, the traps, or the specific loot. These are things that adventurers will discover for themselves. And there are some parts of the dungeon I've yet to reveal to Velzard. She's been more focused on other matters, handling the administrative side of things while I've been overseeing the dungeon itself, he concluded. As Rimuru finished, the guests were left with a sense of wonder and intrigue. They could only imagine the challenges and treasures that awaited within its labyrinthine depths. Rimuru's paw phew, that was a pretty long-winded explanation. Fortunately, the guests didn't seem to mind. They listened intently, absorbing every word I said. It was clear they were thoroughly impressed by the intricacy and planning that went into the dungeon's creation. I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride for our team. Ramirez had indeed come through for Tempest. Her role was indispensable, and without her, none of this would have been possible. My, this project is incredible, Almeja said, her tone filled with honest admiration. The others nodded in agreement, their expressions a mix of awe and curiosity. While I feel a bit uneasy that the storm dragon essentially powers this whole place, I also can't help but marvel at the sheer scale and complexity of the design, Lewis added, speaking earnestly. His words made both Velzard and I chuckle. It was funny how some people could still feel wary of Veldora, even after all this time. This guy really was a massive troublemaker back in the day, huh? Foo, you don't have to worry about my little brother, Lewis-san. He's long since abandoned his ways of causing chaos and needless destruction. Rimu-kun and I are here to keep him in check now, Velzard reassured him lightly, her tone playful. Her words seemed to put everyone at ease, especially Luminous, who visibly relaxed at her assurance. Sensei, will we get to see a live demonstration of the dungeon? Alice asked eagerly, her eyes wide with excitement. Yup, with the founding festival going on, there are lots of adventurers visiting Tempest. And now that the dungeon has officially opened, there will be an influx of challengers eager to test themselves. Ramirez is already announcing the grand opening, so we'll see a lot of activity soon, I answered with a smile, which caused the children to cheer in delight. Awesome! I can't wait to see how everything works. I bet there are some super tough monsters in there, Kenya exclaimed, his voice bubbling with excitement. I glanced over at Chloe, who seemed to be deep in thought, her brows furrowed in curiosity. She looked like she had something on her mind. Sensei, is there some sort of award for defeating Veldora-sama? Chloe asked timidly, her voice barely above a whisper. At her question, the other children immediately turned to me with eager expressions, waiting for my answer. Ha, that's a good question, Chloe. I chuckled. Considering that the final guardian of the whole dungeon is the storm dragon himself, there's definitely something grand an adventurer could gain from accomplishing such an impossible feat, Gazel commented, and I nodded before answering. Well, I don't know if you can consider it a reward, but those who manage to clear the entire dungeon will officially earn the right to challenge me in a battle, I answered casually, and immediately, the guests' eyes widened in shock. What? Almost the entire group yelled in unison, their reactions full of surprise. Sigh. Am I doing way too many surprising things? I swear, I keep shocking people more often than I'd like to admit. But, oh well, it's just part of the fun. And most people definitely wouldn't consider that a reward, Hinata remarked with a hint of disbelief, and the others nodded in agreement. It's only the right to challenge me. Those who manage to clear the entire dungeon don't necessarily have to fight me, but if anyone wanted to take me on, they'd need to defeat all floors first, I added casually, watching as the group began to relax a little at the clarification. Think of it like this. Velzard chimed in with a playful smirk. It's almost impossible for any normal person to clear the dungeon in the first place. It would take someone incredibly powerful and battle-hungry to even come close to accomplishing it. Those who actually manage to do it will probably see the chance to challenge Rimuru-kun as the real prize. She spoke concisely, but it was enough to ease everyone's lingering doubts. Whoa! She really came through for me there. That's actually a good point. As expected of Velzard-sama, Elmisia said, her voice filled with admiration. Velzard simply nodded in acknowledgement, her smile softening. Then it would mean that not very many could reach that point, Errol mused, his voice thoughtful. How many beings can even stand against a true dragon? He asked no one in particular. The others shared his sentiment, exchanging glances that reflected a shared understanding of just how daunting that challenge would be. There are only 2 beings off the top of my head who might be capable of standing up to a true dragon. Those would be Milam Nava, the Destroyer, and Guy Crimson, the Lord of Darkness. They're 2 of the strongest demon lords, Elmisia enumerated. Ha ha ha. Let's not forget Rimuru Dono here, Gazel added with a grin. He's already reached that level of power and will likely get even stronger. He added, which elicited a light chuckle out of us. Let's not talk about that, Gazel-san, I replied, dismissing the comment with a wave of my hand. The last thing I wanted was to delve into that topic right now. This only earned a chuckle from Velzard and a few guests, but they clearly understood my discomfort with the subject. After a few more brief discussions about the dungeon, I led everyone to the large lobby, where several massive screens displayed the action inside the dungeon. The first adventurer parties had already started to arrive, and soon, we'd get to watch them tackle the first few floors of the dungeon. Yo, Rimuru, everything's ready and working as planned. Veldora's voice rang in my mind through thought communication, his usual upbeat tone brimming with excitement. The dungeon is all set to go, Ramirez added, her enthusiasm almost palpable. Great job, you two. I praised them genuinely. I'll stay on the final floor to keep supplying magicules to Ramirez and the dungeon, Veldora said, his voice filled with focus. And I'll stay in the monitoring room to ensure everything goes smoothly, Ramirez added with a sense of responsibility. All right, we'll be in the lobby observing the challengers, I replied, cutting off the communication link. It was time for the fun to begin. We waited patiently, and not long after, the first groups of adventurers arrived. I quickly concealed our presence to avoid attracting attention, letting the group observe the events unfolding on the lower floors. After a short briefing and tutorial, the adventurers descended to the second floor, where the real dungeon experience began. Whoa! You can really see them entering in real time. Look at the screen, Alice exclaimed, her voice filled with pure excitement as she pointed at the large screen before us. The guests couldn't hide their amazement as they watched the live broadcast. They were witnessing the adventurers' every move, even from a distance. Such advanced technology. It's almost like a crystal ball but for real-time events, Gazel mused thoughtfully, his brow furrowing as he tried to comprehend the mechanism behind it. To be honest, his guess was pretty close. I was proud to know that this was some of the most cutting-edge technology in the world. No one else had anything like it. The children marveled at the screens, their excited voices rising in unison. So cool! They chorused, their eyes wide with wonder as the adventurers stepped into the dungeon for the first time. I couldn't help but smile at the energy in the room. Seeing their reaction to something so commonplace to me now was refreshing. It reminded me of just how much Tempest had evolved and how much we had accomplished in such a short time. Then, my attention snapped back to the bottom of the steps. The party I'd been waiting for finally appeared. It was Masayuki and his crew. They stood tall, weapons in hand, ready for the challenge ahead. Their morale was high, and I could practically feel the excitement radiating off them as they made their way down the path to the dungeon entrance. This would be an excellent opportunity to see just how strong Masayuki's unique skill really was. Turning to Velzard, I placed a hand casually on her shoulder. How far do you think Masayuki's party will go, Velz-chan? I asked, genuinely curious about her thoughts. She paused momentarily, her piercing gaze drifting over the adventurers before speaking. I'll be generous and say they'll make it beyond the 50th floor. I'm considering what I know about Masayuki's unique skill, which might carry them quite far down, she answered thoughtfully, her tone calm but confident. That was a surprisingly optimistic estimate, but I couldn't say I disagreed. After all, Chosen One was a ridiculously overpowered skill. The way Masayuki could enhance his allies' strength and abilities was almost unfair. Interesting, I said with a grin. Though my guess isn't far from yours. I'd say they'll make it to the 40th floor or just before the 50th, I told her, my grin widening with each word. Velzard's lips curled into a playful smirk. Era, would you like to make this into a bet? She proposed, her voice laced with mischief. I raised an eyebrow, amused by the challenge. Oh, is that a challenge? I asked, and her eyes lit up with mischief. It is indeed, she affirmed. Since both our guesses have the 50th floor as the middle ground, we'll use that to decide the winner. You win if they don't make it to the 50th floor. And if they make it past the 50th floor, I win, she explained the rules clearly, her smile wide and confident. I leaned in slightly, intrigued by her proposition. And what would you like the bet to be? I asked, my voice dripping with curiosity, though I felt she had something mischievous in mind. The loser has to do whatever the winner demands of them for 3 days. Her answer came with a smug, almost wicked grin. I blinked, momentarily taken aback. That's it? Small stakes, but I accept, I said with a grin, though I couldn't help but feel that Velzard had a more devious plan for me if she won. Still, I wasn't one to back down. Her eyes gleamed with anticipation. Then, in one swift motion, she grabbed my chin and tilted my head up, forcing me to meet her gaze. Era, how bold of you, Rimuru-kun, she purred, her voice laced with amusement. Seeing that confident smirk disappear from your face will be a pleasure, she continued. The closeness of our faces, her soft hand holding my chin, left me momentarily stunned. Yet, without missing a beat, I slid my hand to her waist and gently pulled her closer. Now, our faces were mere inches apart, our eyes locked in a silent challenge. That's my line, Velz-chan, I replied smoothly, my voice low with the same confident smirk she had on hers. For a moment, neither of us moved. We simply stood there, our gazes unwavering, each trying to assert dominance in this little standoff. Her hold on my chin was gentle yet firm, as if testing me. I felt her waist beneath my hand, the fabric of her kimono soft against my touch. The air between us felt charged with an intensity I hadn't expected. I was tempted to let the playful tension linger, but my mind shifted to the thoughts of the upcoming bet. That urge to do something devious was starting to rise within me. Time and place, Rimuru-sama. Also, I have a feeling that you'll regret making this bet. I paused, taken aback by CL's sudden interjection. Huh? What are you talking about? But before I could get an answer, Velzard gave me a sly, knowing smile. Fu, she hummed, clearly enjoying the tension between us. Rimuru-san. Rimuru dono. Sensei? Chapter 18 Introduction to the Class System Luminous Pav. I'm beginning to think that I was right all along. There is something more between Rimuru and Velzard. If it were anyone else who so casually touched her just like he did, I'm sure their very existence would have been erased in an instant. Yet here he is, being incredibly friendly with and even affectionate towards her. It's as if there's no fear or hesitation. I've been keenly observing their dynamic for some time now and concluded that she's more than just his supervisor. I know a thing or two about affection, and what I see between them is nothing short of that. Fu, how lucky that slime truly is. Not only does he have such a beautiful woman at his side, but she's also the most powerful being in this world. Or at least, I think so. While I consider myself quite powerful, those in the catastrophe class are beyond my understanding. Their strength is capable of bending reality to its very limits, so it's hard to rank them objectively. From what I know, Velzard is far more powerful than the evil lizard, and she's certainly stronger than the scorched dragon. Given that Velzard is known as the strongest of the true dragons still alive, it's not a far-fetched assumption. Of course, in the hierarchy of power, Guy and Milam are also considered part of the catastrophe class, supposedly relative in strength. Although I've never seen them fight seriously, so I can't make any claims. What I do know is that they fought for 7 days straight, leaving the land of the West barren. Speaking of Guy, Velzard used to reside on the ice continent with him, meaning they've probably clashed at least once. I'm unsure how that turned out, but I wouldn't put it past Guy to have at least stalemated her. That said, I can't say that Velzard is the absolute strongest being. What I do know is that she's definitely up there. A more frightening thought is that Rimuru is rapidly climbing that same ladder. He's already capable of taking on a true dragon, and even more impressively, he can use their magic. If we exclude Guy and Milam, I wouldn't be surprised if Rimuru could take on the rest of the octagram on his own. But enough of my thoughts for now. I need to focus on the present. Rimuru had just dug himself the most bottomless grave of awkwardness, and I couldn't help but chuckle inwardly as I watched him flounder. This is not what it looks like," Rimuru shouted, his voice cracking slightly as he quickly withdrew from Velzard, his face as red as a tomato. Velzard, in contrast, giggled softly and took a few steps back, giving him some space. She seemed utterly unbothered, if not amused, by the entire spectacle. "Ha ha ha, I didn't know you had it in you, Rimuru Dono," Gazel teased, his voice full of mirth. The others around us chuckled along with him. Rimuru, clearly mortified, stomped his foot lightly on the ground, his fists clenched in a desperate attempt to regain some composure. "Stop," he cried, but it was no use. His pleas only earned more laughter from the crowd. Foo, I never thought I'd see anything like this in all my millennia of living," Almesia remarked, clearly enjoying the spectacle. Velzard's laughter joined hers, the two practically howling in amusement. It was an incredible sight. The usually composed and collected Rimuru was utterly flustered. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The group was really piling on him now, working together like a well-oiled machine. While I'd love to join in on the fun, I had to remind myself to maintain my disguise as a humble maid. A true dragon and a demon lord, now that's an unexpected relationship, Hinata chimed in, her smirk even more mischievous than usual. I could see she thoroughly enjoyed this little drama, though I couldn't help but note that her smug expression only added to Rimuru's embarrassment. "Gosh, I'd love to join in but must maintain my maid persona. It's not like that. At least, not yet," Rimuru mumbled so quietly that only a few of us actually heard it. Velzard's eyes widened, and for a moment, her cheeks tinged red before her expression quickly reverted to its usual calm demeanor. My, so he is planning to make a move on her. Truly a lucky slime. While I felt a pang of jealousy at the thought, I couldn't help but place his odds of success extremely high. Anyone with half a brain could tell that Velzard holds strong feelings for Rimuru. I mean, she was the one who initiated that whole interaction earlier when she casually grabbed his chin, looking at him like he was her next meal. I was never expecting the Frost Dragon to have a personality like this. I thought she was all icy and reserved, but I suppose that was just my assumption. If anything, I can't say I'm disappointed in the least. Weirdly, I see some elements of myself in her. She's assertive, fiercely independent, and oh so bold. The way she grabs the reins in every situation reminds me of myself. And that attraction she clearly feels for Rimuru? Oh, how I know that feeling. I'm confident that if she had the chance, Velzard would pounce on Rimuru without a second thought. It's the same way I would with Hinata if given the opportunity. Turning my attention to the kids, I noticed their reactions. They were all wide-eyed and slack-jawed, looking like they'd just witnessed the most shocking thing in the world. I couldn't blame them. That's how I reacted when I first realized just how close Rimuru and Velzard were. But then something caught my eye. A little girl with waist-length black hair and blue eyes looked almost sad. While the others were just stunned or confused, she had a solemn look on her face. If I recall correctly, this was the child who had always idolized Rimuru at our dinners. I couldn't help but wonder if she had feelings for him. Maybe that's what was causing her discomfort. If so, I'd have to tread carefully. Feelings of unrequited love are never pleasant. Ah, Sensei and Velzard-sama are like that? One of the kids blurted out, the question hanging in the air, unanswered. Rimuru, who had been redder than a tomato, was now on the verge of combusting from the sheer embarrassment. Meanwhile, Velzard turned her gaze toward the child who'd spoken, a mischievous glint flickering in her eyes as a devilish smile curled on her lips. "Era? What do you mean by that?" Kenya-kun?" she asked, her voice sweet but laced with something far more dangerous. Oh dear, even I felt a shiver run down my spine. Velzard can be terrifying when she's in this mood. Rimuru had better do something fast to save that poor kid, or else he's done for. Kenya's face drained of all color, and his body trembled as he stood under Velzard's piercing gaze. The other children, sensing danger, promptly shut their eyes in horror, praying they wouldn't be the next target of her chilling attention. Even the grown-ups couldn't help but watch, amused, as the tension escalated. Fortunately for Kenya, Rimuru's sharp instincts kicked in just in time. He quickly stepped forward, placing his hand gently on Velzard's shoulder, and released the building tension in the room. The children, who had been holding their breath, exhaled in relief. Their young faces slowly returned to normal, the fear melting away. Meanwhile, the guests, who had been eagerly watching the scene unfold, couldn't help but chuckle at the entire spectacle. I must learn to become as terrifying as the Ice Empress herself. Perhaps I could take notes for future reference. Please don't scare my students like that, Rimuru muttered, clearly exhausted from the events of the day. His tone was tired, but there was also a hint of annoyance directed at Velzard's antics. Foo, I just wanted to have some fun around here, Velzard replied with a cheeky laugh, clearly enjoying herself. And once again, Rimuru let out a sigh, the millionth one today, I'm sure. I may not be able to beat him in battle, but I can undoubtedly defeat him through sheer annoyance. Rimuru's pav arg, curse you. Stupid me. That was the worst and most awkward predicament I've ever been in. It's worse than when Hinata dropped the bombshell of me defeating Veldora during that one dinner. I thought I could handle anything, but no. I had to let my urges get the better of me. Now, I'll have to live with the aftermath of that moment for who knows how long. Luckily, I think the worst of it's over now, and we can move on. We can watch the first few challengers brave the dungeon without any more embarrassment hanging over me. A few more parties had arrived just after the first batch entered, and I noticed one group in particular. It was Caval's trio of idiots. Oh boy, they won't even make it past the 10th floor. They'll either get lost on the first few levels or be demolished by a low-level monster due to sheer stupidity. Even with the unique grade equipment we gave them long ago, they'll still find a way to fumble. It's honestly impressive how hard they managed to mess things up. I glanced over at Errol, the overprotective father, to see if he noticed his precious daughter was about to brave the dungeon with her less-than-capable party. But nope, he hadn't noticed a thing. He and a few others were too fixated on one of the screens broadcasting Masayuki's team. They had just reached the 12th floor, and judging by their pace, I might lose the bet. Darn, they're progressing way too fast. I didn't think they'd get this far so quickly. Since Errol was too absorbed in the broadcast, I took the opportunity to walk over to Fuse. I could already tell he would freak out when he found out Caval's crew was in the dungeon. Psst, Fuse-san, can you come with me real quick? There's something I'd like to tell you, I whispered with a cheeky grin, knowing he'd be in for a surprise. Fuse turned to face me, and I signaled for us to move a few meters away from the others. No need to make a scene. What is it, Rimuru Dono? He asked, curiosity evident in his voice. Did you see the group that just entered the dungeon? I asked, my grin widening at the anticipation of his reaction. He shook his head, so I placed a soundproof barrier around us to contain the inevitable outburst. Caval and his party just entered the dungeon, I said, unable to suppress my amusement. Fuse's jaw dropped, his eyes wide with shock. I couldn't help but burst out laughing at his reaction. What on earth? He shouted, his voice incredulous and loud. Thankfully, his outburst was muffled by the barrier. Ha ha ha. I know, right? I exclaimed, my laughter contagious, but Fuse was horrified. He began massaging his temples in frustration, trying to calm down. Those darn idiots aren't lasting a second in there. They'll either get jumped by some weak monster or get lost. Probably both, he complained. I couldn't help but laugh even harder. Only time will tell how well they'll do in there. Who knows? Maybe they'll become better adventurers from this experience if they keep returning, I joked, and Fuse gave me a tired look. Sigh. It's implausible, but I guess we should watch and find out, he said, his tone defeated. I nodded, still grinning, and after dispelling the barrier, we both returned to the main group. The others were intently watching the live broadcast of the parties navigating the dungeon. I noticed more spectators had gathered. Thankfully, The colossal lobby had ample space for multiple crowds to watch while maintaining a decent distance between them. The group around us comprised Velzard, my executives, the esteemed guests, and myself. The rest were citizens of Tempest, adventurer parties, and visiting foreigners. It didn't take long for me to realize that one party had stolen the show. Unsurprisingly, it was Masayuki's team. Everyone watched with wide eyes as his group made their way through the dungeon with impressive speed. I could see the crowd's admiration growing, but what really struck me was how they all cheered for Masayuki. He wasn't doing much other than walking timidly and watching his party fight off the monsters or dodge traps. Yet the spectators were treating him like some kind of hero. I have to admit, Masayuki's skill had given him and his crew a considerable advantage, but it was hard to ignore the ridiculousness of the situation. It's his skill that's making them seem unstoppable, and it's all luck. He was clearly scared out of his mind, and yet his team was doing all the heavy lifting. Still, no one could see that. All they saw was Masayuki's bravery, and they were eating it up, utterly blind to the fact that he was just barely holding it together. His skill had made him a hero in their eyes, even though he was about to wet himself any moment now. Would you like to create a copy of his skill, Rimuru-sama? Huh? Don't we need to analyze him before using skill duplication? That would require me to absorb him with Azathoth, something I'd rather not do. Due to him being within the labyrinth, it is possible to use the analytical abilities of Ramirez's small world, which she gave you access to. Oh yeah, I almost forgot about that. To clarify what seal meant, a few weeks ago, Ramirez, Veldora, and I created a new system to quantify the energy within someone's body or soul. This energy could be their magicule count, holy power, magic power, or pretty much any kind of energy. Thanks to Ramirez's skill, we were able to develop this impressive analytical appraisal system. It's incredibly accurate. It provides a specific value of a person's total energy, called an existence value, and gives us valuable data on their race, blessings, magic, and skills. I've used this system to analyze the power levels of my peers and subordinates. We haven't worked out a proper ranking system for the labyrinth's analysis yet, but we're making steady progress. The labyrinth's appraisal even helped me verify Veldora's massive magicule count of around 88,100,000, which is higher than Velzard's by a slight margin, as hers sits at a staggering 80,900,000. As for me, my existence value, or EP, existence points, is around 25,700,000. Not bad for a mere true demon lord. I'm sure that number will skyrocket when I finally evolve into a true dragon. Even more impressive and frightening is that I can use True Dragon Release to merge Veldora and Velzard's energy with mine. Doing so would elevate my EP to an absurd 194,700,000, combining all three of our values. In that state, I could technically be considered a true dragon, at least in terms of raw power. But even then, I'd lack the essential attribute of embodying a concept. And speaking of skills, the ultimate skill god of the void, Azathoth is CL's creation and the supreme skill that grants me absolute control over the void. It allows me to erase things on a conceptual level, and it's paired with imaginary space, giving me infinite storage capacity and the nearly impenetrable multidimensional barrier. But the true terror lies in the fact that I'm nowhere near being able to wield it in full. To truly tap into Azathoth, I must master imaginary collapse. Since my battle with Veldora, I've been conducting more tests with CL's help, and I can now use Turn Null while only suffering about 15% to 20% damage to myself. Still, it's a dangerous gamble. If I generated too much at once, I'd be obliterated on a conceptual level. It's one of those skills best saved for when there's no other choice. But once I evolve into a true dragon and embody nihility, I'll finally be free of all restrictions. Only then will I be able to fully wield Azathoth without consequences. Despite its limitations, Azathoth is light years ahead of anything I've encountered. When combined with my other ultimate skill, God of Harvest, Shub-Niggurath, Chosen One would be utterly useless in comparison. I don't think I'll need a skill like that right now, but it might be useful to have it analyzed, just in case. Understood, Rimuru-sama. The information of unique skill Chosen One has already been stored within Shub-Niggurath and is ready for duplication whenever necessary. Ha ha ha, as expected of you, Seal. Nice work, partner. Thank you, Rimuru-sama. I returned to the screen displaying Masayuki's team and nearly had a heart attack. What the hell? They're already on the 19th floor. I quickly scanned the room, noticing several other parties had respawned in the lobby, most having met an untimely demise somewhere between floors 10 and 15. Meanwhile, Team Lightspeed and a handful of different groups progressed slowly but steadily. It looked like they would soon reach the 20th floor boss. If I recall correctly, the 20th floor boss is an evil centipede ranked B class. Fufufu, it seems you were lost in your thoughts again, Rimu-kun. You seem rather surprised at their group's current pace. Velzard's smug voice broke through my concentration. Sigh. I'd forgotten to activate thought acceleration again. HMPH. They're not out of the woods yet. The challenges will only get tougher from here, I shot back, trying to mask my surprise, but Velzard's smug attitude didn't falter. Era? I suppose you haven't noticed how his group has faced little difficulty so far. While they may not clear the entire dungeon, I'd wager they'll easily make it past the 50th floor, she retorted, her tone dripping with confidence. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Then let's keep watching. But what if Masayuki's team gets stuck exactly on the 50th floor? I asked. We'll consider it a draw, she said calmly, still smirking as if the outcome was already decided in her favor. Hey, I can't wait to make you do 3 days worth of my paperwork when I win, I teased haughtily, enjoying the thought of her having to deal with all the tedious tasks I usually avoided. Her gaze remained unwavering. Fufufu. And you'll be doing much more than that if I win, she teased, her voice laced with hunger and mischief. Oh no, that tone. She was starting to get dangerously playful. Yeah, I'm sure you'll win, I said dismissively, trying to ignore the wicked glint in her eyes. It was a desperate attempt to change the subject quickly. But her chuckle sent a shiver down my spine as I realized I might have just fallen into her trap. We returned to the broadcast of Team Lightspeed, which had now encountered the evil centipede, a B-class boss monster that awaited them on the 20th floor. The creature was an abomination of shifting, twisting body segments, each bristling with venomous barbs and multiple claws that skittered unnervingly as it moved. The battle began without hesitation. Jinrai immediately took the initiative, charging forward with his mace raised high. With a single, powerful swing, he struck the centipede's tough exoskeleton, forcing the creature to stagger back, its monstrous body reeling from the impact. He wasted no time, retreating swiftly to avoid the creature's retaliatory strike, his movements precise and practiced. As he did, Jiwoo stepped forward, her hands glowing with fiery magic. With a flourish, she cast a devastating fireball that exploded against the centipede's body. The flames licked at its armored skin, sizzling upon contact, but they barely seemed to faze the creature. Bernie, not one to fall behind, lunged forward with his spear, piercing one of the centipede's joints. Sparks erupted as his weapon was charged with lightning, and the electrical current coursed through the monster's body, causing it to convulse and twitch violently. Meanwhile, Masayuki, the supposed leader of Team Lightspeed, barely seemed to contribute to the chaos. Instead, he was darting around the battlefield, his eyes wide with fear as debris flew in all directions, narrowly avoiding the deadly attacks. He moved like a panicked rabbit, his movements erratic and unpredictable, and the terror on his face was evident to anyone watching. His contribution to the battle was minimal at best, but his presence had a strange, almost invisible influence. Despite his cowardice, Masayuki's skill, Chosen One, was active, amplifying the abilities of those around him. Though he wasn't directly engaging with the centipede, his allies seemed to fight with greater precision and power, an almost inexplicable synergy that kept them one step ahead. It's a miracle he's even alive. Honestly, miracle is the only word I can use, considering his skill is basically just plot armor. He's one of those people who can survive anything because fate says so. But then again, who am I to talk? From the moment I had reincarnated into this world, I had been gifted with two unique skills that were absurd in their own right. When paired together, they formed an unstoppable combination, and now those skills had evolved into their ultimate forms. Even if we compared Chosen One to Seal and my skills, it was clear that Masayuki's skill was just a crutch. I shook my head, focusing back on the battle unfolding on the screen. As the fight progressed, it became apparent that Bernie and Jiwoo were the true pillars of the team, their individual combat abilities standing far above Masayuki's. Without their raw strength and coordination, the group would have been in serious trouble against such a formidable opponent. I'm starting to grow a bit wary of those two. They're definitely not your average adventurers. Even if they're getting a power boost from Masayuki's skill, there's no denying their abilities. They're dangerous. My mind began to race. They could be spies from some other nation, one of those who'd slip into Tempest under the guise of a friendly adventuring team while gathering information for their masters. The founding festival was open to anyone, and I knew from experience that foreign agents sometimes used such events as cover. With so many participants, it was the perfect opportunity to gather intel unnoticed. I can't let my guard down. Seal, is it possible to wipe their memories after they finish with the dungeon? If those two are spies, I want to take preemptive measures. Yes. With memory manipulation, a target's memories can be altered or completely erased. However, this skill is still somewhat experimental, so it only works effectively with more recent memories. That's pretty impressive, to be able to alter or delete memories entirely, but when did I even acquire this skill? I may or may not have created it during my spare time. I figured it could prove helpful in a variety of situations, so I added it to your arsenal. It's now stored within Shub-Niggurath's skill storage, ready for use. As expected of you, Seal. Always thinking ahead. You really can't restrain yourself, huh? But I suppose that's one of your best traits. Foo. Praise me more, Rimuru-sama. Yeah, you're the best. Thank you, Rimuru-sama. Looks like everything will be just fine. On that note, memory manipulation is surprisingly powerful. I'm surprised it's classified as an extra skill despite its potential. It's a fantastic non-violent solution to spy problems, at least for now. I've also noticed that Seal seems to have a lot of fun with altering and creating skills, and it's become her favorite hobby, although she does not have many in the first place. Once my plate becomes less occupied, I might start experimenting with skill creation myself. It requires a decent amount of magicules, but my EP is relatively high, so it should be no problem. According to Seal, creating an ultimate skill without needing a unique skill as a foundation is entirely possible. The thought of this alone terrifies me. Shub-Niggurath's sheer potential for such a creation, with the right mix of information and energy, should not be underestimated. In my case, the ability to gift skills through skill gifting only adds to the daunting possibilities. As long as a skill is compatible, I can pass it on to my subordinates, potentially making them even more formidable than they already are. The first two that come to mind when I think about gifting ultimate skills are Benimaru and Diablo. Both have such potent abilities that giving them something on par with an ultimate skill would make them nearly unstoppable. I can only imagine how they'd react. Benimaru would probably get a thrill out of it, and Diablo, well, he would likely take the opportunity to refine his already incomprehensible power. But I decided to push that thought aside for the moment. I shifted my focus back to the screen, where the broadcast of Team Lightspeed was still playing. I watched as Bernie delivered the final blow to the evil centipede, its enormous form finally collapsing in defeat. The team then began the familiar process of looting the creature's carcass, collecting any valuable items before moving on to the next floor. From the looks of it, they were advancing through the dungeon with little to no effort. But I knew better. Things were about to get a lot more difficult. This was just the beginning. If it weren't for the other parties struggling to make it past the 15th floor, I would have come to believe that this dungeon is easy to get through, Gazel remarked thoughtfully, his voice laced with a hint of concern. Errol nodded in agreement. My thoughts exactly. I initially thought the levels weren't that difficult. But seeing the other groups facing huge hurdles made me think otherwise, he said, and I raised an eyebrow. So, Errol still had yet to notice his daughter? Interesting. Foo, but it should get more challenging from here on out. Isn't that right, Rimuru-san? Elmesia asked, clearly expecting me to confirm her suspicions. I nodded, smiling at her in return. Indeed it will. The guardians on floors 30 and 40 will be quite the challenge, I said, adding a hint of excitement in my voice. The three of them nodded, eager to see the challenges ahead. We continued watching the progress of Masayuki's group as they advanced past the 21st floor. With each step forward, they seemed more confident, no longer looking like the frightened adventurers they were when they first entered the dungeon. It made sense. After all, they were the first of 5 parties to clear the 20th floor, and their reward of 5 gold coins was a nice incentive. The reward system we implemented was simple but effective. It encouraged adventurers to take on the dungeon, knowing there would be a tangible payoff for their efforts. The rewards reset each month to entice repeat runs and keep the challenge fresh. Masayuki, for his part, looked less terrified as he went deeper. I suppose the strength of his team and the boost from his skill had given him a false sense of security. It was amusing to watch his confidence grow, but I knew it wouldn't last. Not with the Guardians waiting for them on the lower floors. The Guardian on the 30th floor was an A-class Kijin with an EP of 85,000, accompanied by 5 B-class Ogre subordinates. Meanwhile, the Guardian on the 40th floor was a special A-class Tempest Serpent with an impressive EP of 175,000. Both were formidable, and I knew that even the strongest adventurers would have trouble with them. Though imperfect, our ranking system provides a reliable way to assess individuals based on their existence value, or EP, standing for existence points. We evaluate strength by placing individuals into specific classes based on their EP. These 4 represent the lower tiers: F class, EP below 1000 D class, EP between 1000 and 5000 C class, EP between 5000 and 8000 B class, EP between 8000 and 10,000. Beyond this point, the classes widen, and the jumps in EP become more pronounced: A class, EP between 10,000 and 100,000. Special A class, EP between 100,000 and 500,000. This corresponds with the old system's hazard class. S class, EP between 500,000 and 1 million. This class aligns with the old system's calamity class and is typically for demon lord seeds or similarly powerful beings. Special S class, million class, EP exceeding 1 million. This aligns with the old system's disaster class, typically for true demon lords or comparable beings. True dragon class. This class evaluates a being's combat prowess, skills, and EP. It includes true dragons and others of comparable power. The old system referred to this as catastrophe class. Genesis class. A hypothetical class for beings transcending the world's laws. These individuals would have an EP of 500 million or more, surpassing even the combined EP of the 3 living true dragons. Currently, no one belongs to the Genesis class, though Rimuru and Veldora have suggested that Veldora would have likely qualified had we been able to measure his existence value. But with no way of determining it, that class remains empty. The thought of this class honestly scares me. The mere idea of such power existing is unsettling, and I can't imagine anyone ever reaching it. It is within the realm of possibility, Rimuru-sama. Yeah, right. I pushed aside CL's unsettling comment and focused on the facts. My own ranking was quite satisfactory for now, and there was no reason to strive for something more. Despite my status as a true demon lord, I was still ranked in the true dragon class, also known as the catastrophe class, given my battle with Veldora. That was a good enough ranking for me. As of now, Veldora, Velzard, and I are the only true dragon class individuals in Tempest. That's a solid position to be in, and for now, I'll leave the rankings as they are. There's no need to overthink it. Thud. I heard the heavy sound of a body hitting the floor, and I immediately turned my attention back to the broadcast. The screen showed Jinrai crumpling lifelessly. Yikes! That was brutal. It seemed Jinrai's luck had finally run out. He'd fallen victim to a trap which had swiftly killed him. Apparently, he'd wandered off from his party, searching for loot when disaster struck. I suppose greed is what got him in the end. Scanning the lobby, I saw Jinrai had respawned, a look of sheer horror on his face. His hands shook as he frantically checked his body, making sure everything was intact. After a few moments of hyperventilating, he managed to calm down. That was brutal, Hinata muttered. I shifted my focus to the children nearby. Some looked terrified, while others seemed strangely unaffected. The trap was incredibly subtle and inconspicuous. It's no surprise it caught him off guard, Lewis remarked casually, and the others nodded in agreement. While their team is down one member, it seems he was the weakest of the group, Errol observed thoughtfully, and Elmesia looked at him, intrigued. So, you're saying this loss won't actually hinder them much? She asked, her tone seeking clarification. Errol nodded, confirming her statement. It seems that way, he added. I suppose we'll find out soon enough. They've already cleared the 29th floor and are about to face the next guardian, Gazel added, and I couldn't help but gape in disbelief. Already? I blurted, my voice tinged with shock. The others turned to look at me, clearly puzzled. Yeah, were you spacing out, Rimuru-san? Elmesia asked, her voice laced with curiosity. I felt my face flush with embarrassment. Not again. To make matters worse, I heard Velzard's soft giggle from behind me, sounding far too amused. Era, You're incredibly aloof today, Rimuru-kun. What were you lost in thought about? Velzard teased, her hands settling lightly on my shoulders. Ehehehe. I was just thinking about the various systems in the labyrinth and how we might improve them, I replied sheepishly, my embarrassment growing as laughter rippled through the group. You should pay attention to this next battle. I'm interested to see how they handle the next Guardian, Velzard said, urging me gently, and I nodded, doing my best to focus. Turning my attention back to the screen, I saw the group of 3 standing a few meters away from the 30th floor Guardian, Shimo, the Frost Kijin. Ah, this one. Shimo was originally an ogre from the Kurenai unit, who evolved into a Kijin. Her mastery of ice magic was extraordinary, so I made her a guardian of the dungeon, I explained enthusiastically. Indeed, it's fascinating to see a Kijin wielding ice magic. And she's remarkably skilled as well, Velzard commented genuinely, clearly impressed. Shimo was an incredibly skilled ice magic user, a rarity among Kijins, who were generally fire-based. Her combat prowess was nothing short of exceptional, and her ability with a sword made her one of the most formidable fighters among Benimaru's Kurenai unit. She had been the first of the ogres to evolve into a Kijin, and despite her lower EP, her affinity with magic and combat abilities more than made up for it. I'd say she could hold her own against Sue, maybe even Benimaru, in their Kijin forms. The remaining members of Masayuki's group stood inside a vast room covered in snow and ice, the ground slick and treacherous. Several massive ice pillars jutted up from the floor, reaching toward the ceiling, serving both as structural supports and cover spots. A ceaseless snowstorm ravaged the area, making movement difficult and visibility poor. I might have placed Shimo on a floor too high for her. The Guardian's EP determined their placements, but I hadn't considered the impact of her skills and sheer combat prowess. In those areas, Shimo could have easily been the boss for floors 40 or 50. I commend you for reaching my domain, but this is where your adventure ends. Before I turn you all into ice sculptures, let me introduce myself. I'm Shimo, the Frost Kijin and the Guardian of the 30th floor. It was nice knowing you, Shimo greeted them coldly, drawing her ice-coated blade. The sword she wielded was no ordinary weapon. Crafted by Kurobe, it was a legend-grade weapon that could effectively channel Shimo's magic. Upon striking an opponent, the blade would quickly freeze its target, enhancing her already formidable ice powers. Yeah, I definitely placed Shimo way too high up. And by too high, I mean she's probably stronger than the Tempest serpent on the 40th floor. Foo, I like her already, Velzard remarked, clearly delighted by Shimo's icy demeanor. Sigh, why am I not surprised? Shimo was a powerful ice wielder with a chilling personality to match. Of course, Velzard would take a liking to her. Now then, show me what you've got, Shimo.